Today, we're looking at Robert Oster's Tranquility. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Robert Oster's Tranquility is another one of his great turquoise inks. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples, I put the ink into a different pen for a day, I then put it into a Retro 51 Tornado with a broad nib to take my notes for this video. Now before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography. And I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this very light green across the bottom with a vivid blue, but it's not a dark vivid. It's a very bright, light feeling. It's a cold blue. That's actually what I would call it, is a cold blue with this very cool green. It makes for a very interesting mix. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And truly the only difference that I'm seeing is some of that green trailed its way up, leaving tiny bits behind, but that was about it. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on a page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pens. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it's handling itself pretty well considering that chromatography. That extra fine is about a fine. It's not blown out, blurry, or unreadable. It makes me feel safe in a note-taking situation. Now, water's removing all of its darkest tones, but it's leaving this very light green behind, even though you can see the dots of the Rhodia dot pad. Now, the pen flush is completely removing it from the paper. You easily see the dots of the paper. Not all of it is white, but you can see that with more than 30 seconds, that pen flush will get all of this ink out. Now, bleach, as would be expected, the 1/3 bleach solution has obliterated it off the paper, but there is no need to use that to get this out of your pen. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with a realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Robert Oster's Tranquility has a viscosity of 2.31, making it normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Robert Oster's Tranquility has an average dry time of 6 seconds, making this a ridiculously fast-drying ink. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and this looks like an incredibly full sample, and that's because I accidentally bought it twice, and then with some of the orders I did with Van Ness, sometimes when you do these larger orders, they throw you in that bonus ink. At least that's what I'm hoping they're doing, and that they're not making a mistake, but they're sending me a bonus. But they sent me a bonus of one I already had, and so I've completely used it up and a half, and this is the 1.5 that was left of the total of 3 that I had. And it's good that I had that much because I do enjoy this ink. To keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and the shading is beautiful here. We get very light tones and very dark tones, like in the word Oster. It doesn't ignore the middle tones. It doesn't just have light and just have dark. It gives the full range. Like when we go from Tranquility, we start with very dark. We work our way much lighter. We work our way much darker again, working lighter and working darker, and it's beautiful. The extra fine is slightly lighter in tone, in general tone, than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and the shading is gorgeous. It doesn't just give dark spots, it does a full grade from dark to light.
in its tones as it does it. So the quick goes from a dark full grade to light, full grade up to dark again. Beautiful. Brown starts darker and works its way slowly down to the end to where it's its lighter tone. This is truly amazing just looking at it. It's so nice. 6 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and the shading is gorgeous. It's, again, that full grade in quick, from very dark, works its way all the way down and all the way dark again. It's beautiful. Fox starts dark, works its way very light, and works its way very dark, all in a single small word. When I look at the zero, it starts very light, and as I came around, it became very dark. Let's bring it close to look at that. Look at how the shading, come on, focus. Look at how the shading in the zero for 10 seconds is. It's like that all over the place. So I'm just going to refer to this as that spectacular shading that this ink has. It took 10 seconds to dry. Now the extra fine and the medium scrubby showed us a lot of color variation, and there is a lot of color variation. The smear test, you could probably recover it if you smeared while you were writing. Rhodia, no bleeding, and a tremendous amount of ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread. It has halo all over it. Beautiful. Beautiful. I think this might be the first turquoise, aquamarine, calling it aquamarine, ink I've seen that has had this haloing. It's gorgeous. It's got no sheen and no shade. Okay. Now I know that there's that moment of sheen in the swab. It's not, come on camera. Come on camera. Where are we at? It's that really dark line. Come on. It does have some sheen that's possible, but I only ever got to see it here. That sheen that shows up in the color swab, not color swab, the chemical test, is what I'm seeing as its halo. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the 1.1. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 10 seconds to dry. The medium is quite a bit darker than the extra fine, just a tone lighter than the 1.1. The medium has no feather, spread. It has halo. It has a very nice halo, very thin halo. No sheen, no shade, 18 seconds to dry. When I look at the scrubby of the extra fine and the medium, I don't see any color variation. I didn't get any, but the medium shows the halo that I did get in the writing. And the smear test, I do not think you could recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Rhodia. It's like something stuck in my throat. Rhodia, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and it has some shading. Not as good a shading as we've seen on the Clairefontaine, but it does offer some shading. More noticeably in how dark certain parts of words are. Like at the end of Tranquility, it's quite a bit darker than the O in Oster. So there is quite a bit of color variation here, although I'm not seeing as much of it on this paper with a 1.1. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and it has some very nice shading. Again, not as nice shading as we saw with the Clairefontaine. We see darker letters. The B in brown is darker than the rest of the word. Okay? The L in lazy is darker than the rest of the word. The K in quick is darker. They're not significantly darker, but they are certainly darker, and we see some of that lighter to darker. It's like having a mid-tone and a dark mid-tone. It's 5 seconds to dry. The medium is darker than the extra fine, but not quite as dark as the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and the shading is gorgeous. It is an amazing shading throughout this writing. Brown starts nice and dark, gets really light, gets really dark again. And I'm seeing some of the shading within the same letters similar to what I saw with the O on Clairefontaine. The 0 for that 10. It's beautiful. 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows plenty of color variation, although I didn't get as much in the extra fine. There is some there, but we don't see as much of it here. It's more on camera than it is in person. The medium has plenty. There is plenty to be seen, and the smear test you could certainly recover if you smeared while you were writing. Now, Moji's a cheaper production paper. It's not bad paper. It's pretty good paper, but it's a little more absorbent. It has no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade, and that's more a quality of the paper. The extra fine is a lighter tone than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading, 4 seconds to dry. The medium is a darker tone than the extra fine or the 1.1, by far the darkest. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade, 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby for the extra fine shows very little color variation, but we got none. The medium shows none, and we got none. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. This is Word Notebooks. It bleeds deeper into the page on both the medium and the extra fine. I don't worry about the scrubby part. This would be fine for a carry-around notebook. It doesn't touch the page underneath, but I don't know about using the back of the page. The medium has no spread, but it has feathering, tiny little feathers all over it. No halo, no sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is certainly lighter than the medium. The extra fine has it has some spread. It has no big feathers. It's like it's blurry on the cross of the T. It's like it's blurry at the top of the K or in the F, but not all over it. So it's like selective feathering, but it's not big distracting feathers. No halo, sheen, and no shade, 1 second to dry. The scrubby shows us plenty of color variation, although we get none. And the smear test, you can't smear it. It dries too fast. 28-pound copy paper. Doesn't like the medium, does great with the extra fine. If we look at the extra fine, it's got no bleeding and no ghosting. Medium has ghosting. The medium has no spread, and it has feathers, tiny feathers, all over the word Tranquility, but not on the word Oster. No halo, no sheen, and no shade. Extra fine is a lighter tone than the medium. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. It performs fantastic on the 28-pound premium copy paper. 1 second to dry. Now the scrubby shows us some color variation, but we got none. And the smear test, you can't smear this. It dries too fast. That's all that I have for the writing.
Instead of finding inks that look like Robert Oster's Tranquility, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. And I was having a little bit of trouble here, so I wanted a nice orange, because I always feel like orange goes with everything except red. I chose Diamine's Pumpkin. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Robert Oster's Tranquility? It has an unpredictability when writing with it, depending on your nib and flow. Now, with that, every color that it gives is fantastic. This is absolutely tremendous in the amount of color variation that can occur from your aquamarine, your teal, your turquoise. It's amazing. They're very distinctly different colors depending on the flow and nib width. And this is oddly, while that's not something I like, I enjoy it with this ink because every one of those is absolutely fantastic. Thanks for watching.